Why the libertarian impulse? Now, partly as the government gets bigger, it becomes more comprehensively annoying, and the annoyances add up.
In 2011, you discussed in your Washington Post column a rather obscure tract called The Declaration of Independence, how libertarian politics can fix what's wrong with America, and you wrote, "These incurably upbeat journalists with Reason magazine believe that not even government, try as it will, can prevent onrushing social improvement. America," you continued, "is moving in the libertarians' direction not because they have won an argument, but because government and the sectors it dominates have made themselves ludicrous. This has opened minds to the libertarian argument." Is it correct to say that you yourself, over the years, are inclining more in a libertarian direction as well?
Yes, for several reasons. The first is that I've lived in Washington now for 44 years, and that's a lot of folly to witness up close. And whatever confidence and optimism one felt toward the central government when I got here in January 1st, 1970 is pretty much dissipated at the hands of the government. Second, I participate, although I'm 72 and too old to learn very much, I do participate in the changing technological assumptions. I'll give you an example. When I was growing up and I wanted to hear the songs of the day, Bill Haley and the Comets and the Platters and all that stuff, I would turn on the radio and hope that the disc jockey I was listening to would play 3 or 4 of the songs I wanted to hear in the next hour. My daughter and other children want to hear their songs, they just go to the internet and they have 50,000. When I wanted a cup of coffee, I went to a coffee shop and ordered a cup of coffee. Now you go to a Starbucks or somewhere and you have a mind-boggling number of choices. And choice just seems more natural, more built into the social environment.
So what does that have to do with government, though, or your assumptions about government?
Well, first of all, government operates on one-size-fits-all because that suits the bureaucratic method and impulse, which is empire building and a manifest destiny on the part of every bureaucracy to maximize its mission. You can see it in everything from the Secret Service, no president can be safe enough, to Obamacare.
You have said previously that John McCain was kind of helpful in your evolution in a more libertarian direction. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, the McCann-Feingold law did something that it never occurred to me even Congress would have the audacity and effrontery to do, or that the Supreme Court would ratify, which it largely did at first. And that is, Congress, which is to say incumbent legislators, passed laws limiting the content, timing, and quantity of political speech about incumbent legislators. And this passed, which shouldn't have surprised me, but it did, and was, as I say, ratified by the Supreme Court.
So I mean, that was kind of the final moment, right? Your Kronstadt moment or something where you gave up completely on large government as an instrument of...
That was part of it. I also, I'm a reader, and I read Mansur Olson, and I read Jonathan Rauch's Demosclerosis, where he applied some of Olson's insights about how interest groups fasten like barnacles on a ship of state and eventually immobilize the ship and make reform almost impossible.
Let's talk about this in context of Statecraft to Soulcraft, which was published in '83. And it was kind of, I mean, you had been in the public eye for a decade or more, but this was kind of a big statement. And among other things, you wrote caustically of the differences, or actually the similarities between liberals and conservatives at the time. And you were talking about people like FDR and Ronald Reagan. You wrote, "I will do many things for my country, but I will not pretend that the careers of, say, Ronald Reagan and Franklin Roosevelt involve serious philosophical differences." Specifically, you faulted both groups for believing that the inner life of citizens are, and you talked about our sentiments, manners, and moral opinions were none of the government's business. So you were saying that Ronald Reagan meant it when he said that he was an FDR Democrat, and that the problem with them is that they left people alone too much?
No, what Ronald Reagan said, I'm an FDR Democrat, not a Great Society Lyndon Johnson Democrat. That Ronald Reagan never assaulted, never promised to assault in any fundamental way the social safety net. It was when government got into the business of saying who should live where, who should think what, the Great Society agenda of comprehensive social engineering, that Reagan got off the bandwagon. Statecraft to Soulcraft, read by dozens, began as the Godkin Lectures at Harvard, in 3 lectures in 1981. The subtitle is What Government Does, not what government should do, but what government cannot help but do. Any regime, by its structure of laws, is affirming certain values and discouraging certain vices. If you have a free market, laissez-faire society, a market society affirms certain values: choice, freedom, self-reliance, sanctity of contract, promise-keeping, all the rest. And therefore, when you choose your regime, you are choosing to affirm and nurture and encourage a certain character. That's why what I said is government cannot not be in any business other than the soulcraft business.
Do you still believe that?
I do, and I think you do too.
Well, yeah, let me ask us, in the column that you had written about our book, The Declaration of Independence, you noted the essence of libertarian political thought is the commonsensical principle that before government interferes with the freedom of the individual and of individuals making consensual transactions in markets, it ought to have a defensible reason for doing so. It usually does not. Now, you're just talking about McCain-Feingold. You're the entitlement state. You've been an arch critic of things like Medicare and Social Security. You are against war in Syria. You became a critic of the Iraq invasion. I mean, the beads are piling up where you say, okay, government can't do these things, right? Where are some places that the government still should be limiting human interaction? Or where is it defensible to say, no, actually people can't do this?
Fewer and fewer, as you say. Obviously, there are neighborhood effects of pollution, neighborhood effects of noise, neighborhood effects of all sorts. Where the government goes astray is when the government decides that it is going to allocate wealth and opportunity. And that's almost entirely what the government does nowadays. The tax code, for example, as Chairman Dave Camp of Michigan, Chairman of the House Ways and Means Committee, says the tax code is longer than the Bible without the good news, because it is entirely rent-seeking. It is more than the appropriations process. The tax code is how the government allocates favors. And we reach a point, and this is sort of a systemically important point and why I go to the tax code. We may have reached a point where the tax code is so complicated it cannot be reformed. That is, because if you say, let's start over, as Camp and Baucus have tried to do, they said, okay, we're going to have a blank slate. We're going to wipe out all the exemptions, credits, deductions, all the rest, and it's up to you people to defend them, and we'll put them back in. The problem is, if you start with a blank slate, you're not picking one fight with every American, you're picking 5 fights with every American, and the system can't handle it.
If government exists to secure certain rights and it should be treating people as individuals, why wouldn't that clearly indicate that 2 men or 2 women should be allowed to marry with all the privileges that the state secures?
Well, this argument at this point is, to me, highly unsatisfactory because we're arguing about the name. Mm-hmm. I mean, even people who say we want to deny the word marriage to this are all for civil unions with the full panoply of social rights and entitlements. So it's frankly, it's not an argument that interests me very much, other than to say that it's helped some of our liberal friends rediscover federalism. We now have blue state federalism. People say, oh, that's a good idea. Marijuana, let Colorado decide. And marriage, good, Californians, see what happens. And so it's been an educational moment for our centralizing friends.
Marijuana federalism, you wrote a couple of really interesting columns, I think, last year talking about your own kind of rethinking of where our drug laws are, where incarceration, the kind of problem of over-incarceration in this country right now. Where are you right now when it comes to, should people be arrested for smoking pot or selling it?
Well, my first point is I want various states to try various regimes. Let's see what happens. I mean, 1 in 8 Americans lives in California. That's a big laboratory. And let's see what happens out there. And Colorado's going through all kinds of difficulties. It's unanticipated questions arise. Workplace safety, what about driving when you're using a controlled but legal substance, all the rest. Let's figure it out by having little experiments. To the extent that our drug laws are driving mass incarceration, which is a national scandal and a huge national waste of money and a huge assault on the social fabric, because everyone who goes to jail, almost everyone who goes to jail, is coming out, coming home, back to the neighborhood, and is not coming home improved by the experience. To that extent, to the extent that the drug laws are tangled up in all the rest, they need a radical rethinking.